We are down to the Frozen Four teams. This is Todd Milewski here with Nicole Haase, and this is the PodKaz from USCHO.com. Nicole, it's an exciting time of the year. 4 teams, 3 games left. We'll have a national champion by the end of the week. How are you feeling about this, seeing Ohio State, Wisconsin, Penn State, and Northeastern go through to the final weekend of the season?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily surprised by Penn State or Northeastern based on the way the season's gone, but also if you'd have asked me to name the Frozen Four a few months ago, I wouldn't have named those 2 teams. So a little bit of a surprise, right? I think, most people expected Wisconsin and Ohio State to be here. Plenty of people wish that they weren't. But yeah, I think way to go, both Northeastern and Penn State, which is just to say, like, they're both been, top 5 ranked teams and ended up here. And, we've talked a lot about how I think this has probably been on Penn State's radar this entire time. And I've been thinking a lot this week just about, like, what an amazing 4 years it's been for them since the last time they hosted the Frozen Four, which they were not a ranked team at that time. And obviously bringing in Tessa Janicki did that, and a lot of what is positive is a ripple effect of bringing in Tessa, but it's not just Tessa, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I think it's difficult because it's still a Big Ten program with lots of resources, and so I don't know that it's like a lesson that tons of other universities can get a lot from. But I do think even still, sort of like what we've seen from them, what we saw from Ohio State a few years ago, like it's good to see sort of when you put resources in and when you put attention and when you make the right choices for your program, that it pays off. And I think that's, even if you are, a Big Ten program, I think there's things that we can learn from that and show it to other universities. Like it does make a difference when you do these sorts of things, and it pulls your team where they need to be. Even just the sort of like Penn State, we saw this coming, right? But they hadn't won an NCAA game before this. Like they were winning the AHA, but not going any further. And they have continued to do what they need to do to be in this position now. So all that is to say, it's both unsurprising and surprising, but I think it's going to be some really fun hockey this weekend. So that's the best part.
Yeah, I hope that Penn State being in the tournament makes it, the atmosphere a little bit more energetic. I mean, we saw you were there 4 years ago in 2022. I was not, but the crowds were sparse. I feel like if you throw the home team in there, even though they, looking at last week's attendance numbers of 1,700, it not incredibly inspirational there, but still you have a chance there to get some more people in and get them exposed to one, the Penn State program, which is on a real upward trajectory. And then 2, the women's hockey game, which also has, had a lot of things going forward over the last couple of years, and especially over the last couple of months with the Olympics, and then beyond that, the PWHL. But a lot of chances there to take advantage of this.
Yeah, I keep going in circles on it. Like maybe the Olympics of it all helps, but if they didn't go when tickets were quite inexpensive, I don't know that they're going to go when they're $40.
That's fair.
And not that that's an expensive ticket for a national championship, but it is the price of a ticket for, to go on Sunday. So yeah, the problem is that it's a fantastic facility and it is absolutely a pain in the butt to get there, and hotel prices are crazy expensive, and there's usually 17 other things happening on campus at that time. And then like we were having this discussion because my husband said somebody on Reddit was like, I'm taking my family to the Frozen Four, but there's no clinic, there's no fan fest, what are we going to do? And it's like, there's nothing to recommend for you to do for the weekend. Go to some other sporting events is basically it. And so it's a toss-up. It's a great facility. I don't want to bag on it, but at the same time, it's not an ideal for a growing women's hockey Frozen Four experience. This is not the one for getting people to come out and sort of to build on that Olympic bump, because it's just so difficult to get there, to find somewhere to stay. Like it's expensive and it's inaccessible.
Yeah.
So I also have hopes. I hope that, being close to Ohio State, that gets people to travel. I hope, that's also much closer for Northeastern than if it were somewhere in the West, air quotes West. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have tons of high hopes when they weren't getting people to their AHA championship or to their quarterfinal game this weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll see how the marketing is, I guess, and if that makes any difference, in the local area, bringing some people out that maybe didn't even know Penn State was that good in women's hockey. So that's kind of the threshold you have to cross.
apparently some of the materials keep saying University of Pennsylvania. So
I've heard that.
That's not
helpful.
not ideal. People, yeah, if you're relying on the marketing and the marketing materials are written wrong, because we've heard that in stadium, and then I heard it from some people as well. So yeah, one step forward, two steps back, always,
Sure.
right?
Yes. Okay. We will get into the semifinal matchups, the Friday games, a little later on in our show, but we want to go back through how we got there through last Saturday's regional finals, and we'll kind of go in order of when they finished. At the Penn State and NIttany Lions, I'm not quite sure whether their game finished first or Wisconsin's did, but I'm going to say they're first because they're the home team here. 3-0 victory over UConn in that regional final. That's the first NCAA tournament victory in NIttany Lions program history. They had lost their first 3. It felt like a really close game, and it didn't feel like a really close game kind of at the same time. It felt like Penn State was in control, but UConn was hanging on. And then Tessa Janicki scores in the third to make it 2-0. Abby Stonehouse adds an empty net goal. Katie Disa ends up with 36 saves for the shutout. It did kind of feel like a Penn State game in a lot of ways, that they got a couple goals, played really well in the D end, and got to the finish line.
Well, that second goal was a mistake. Tia Chan came out and misplayed the puck, and Janicki stole it and put it in. So, and then obviously the empty netter. So in the end, you're talking, essentially a 1-0 game without some mistakes, and to that makes it. And I always say that in that, like, Connecticut just needed one to really, like, change, I think, the momentum of that game, but they just didn't seem to be shooting with purpose or with, like, the desire. I don't, like, of course they wanted to win, but I just felt like, they had some limited opportunities. Penn State was playing great defense, but it was there for them, and I'm just not sure that they had whatever it is that would make them sort of reach out and take it. Like, as you said, it was a close game. I think it was anybody's game technically, and yet I never felt like that wasn't Penn State's game. So I don't know how that works in a game that was essentially 1-0 for most of it. But, Penn State scored 3 minutes in. Like, Connecticut had the whole game. And it just never quite felt like they were ever gonna wrest that back. Yeah, I don't know. It was a weird and interesting game. I went back and watched some of it because it was happening at the same time we were in Madison. And I the score would lead you to believe that game was closer than I think that it actually was. But it also, I think, is telling that Penn State wasn't able to put more on the board either. They're obviously going to have to score, again, one from a goalie turnover and one on an empty netter. Like, I think they're going to have to score more than 3, honestly, if they're going to win this weekend. And I think, giving them 3 in this game is generous in terms of, like, their offensive output. So, I think there were some lessons learned for them in that game, but it will definitely be interesting to see sort of what comes next.
Yeah. That first round game was UConn beating Princeton 4-1 leading into that regional. In Madison, it was Quinnipiac beating Franklin Pierce 4-0 in the Thursday night game, leading into the Saturday regional final, where Wisconsin came out with a 6-0 victory behind a Kelly Gorbatenko hat trick. 17 saves from Ava McNaughton, Lacey Eden, and Kirsten Sims each had a goal and an assist. I mean, these are the names that figure were going to be part of it for Wisconsin. Maybe not necessarily Gorbatenko. She isn't, an Olympian. She isn't the kind of maybe first line player you think of with Wisconsin if you're from a national perspective, but she's got 25 goals, 27 goals, whatever it is now. Not someone you can take lightly. And her last 3 games, she scored 3 in 3 of the last 13 games for Wisconsin with a total of 9 goals in those 3 games. So when she scores, she scores in bunches.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think anyone's surprised to see Wisconsin come out of this regional. This is their 4th straight Frozen Four. I thought this was going to be a closer game on the scoreboard than what it turned out to be. I thought Quinnipiac was going to be a little bit better defensively, but Wisconsin scored 2.5 minutes into the game, and that really felt like let the Badgers play their style.
Yeah, I think it was twofold. One is that I think Wisconsin did the work they needed to do to come out and be the team that they can be on paper, coming out of that WCHA championship game where they were not. I felt like to some extent, and then I do not mean this as offensive to Quinnipiac at all, but I kind of thought going into this game, like the team most likely to beat Wisconsin is Wisconsin, just in terms of how they have mentally not been, been there. And they obviously made those changes and did what they needed to do. I thought it was really interesting. Cass Turner talked about, Quinnipiac's coach, Cass Turner, after the game, talked about some previous series against the Badgers in which her team lost the first game and then tied or won the second game. And so she was really trying to find a way for her team to play that second game mentality. But I think it's just really hard. You can't prepare for the speed and the pressure. I think that's just what it is. It's just a different style of game. I think it's the same thing we saw with Yale against Ohio State. It's a different style. And if you aren't playing at that tempo, it takes an adjustment. And I do think that they'd have been able to adjust and think about it more and do better if this were more than one game series. But to do that from the outset, I think they just struggled. You don't have time and space. You can't stop and think about it. And Wisconsin pushed even more than they normally do, I think, on that forecheck, and Quinnipiac could not get out of the zone. So they were either turning it over before they even reached the half line, much less their own blue line, or having to ice the puck. So it was pretty strong from Wisconsin, and I think Quinnipiac got very frustrated very quickly. And that turned into a bit of a chippy, ugly game in that way too.
Moving on to Minneapolis, the 4-5 game ended up with the 5 seed winning for the third time in 5 seasons, that being Northeastern with a 4-2 victory over Minnesota. The Huskies ran out to a 4-0 lead. Eloise Caron strikers a blocky, Mia Langlois in the first. Morgan Jackson makes it 4-0 in the second. And boy, that was eye-opening. Abby Murphy pulled back a couple of power play goals for the Gophers in the third period. But Lacey Janssen makes 45 saves. I mean, I really have to give Northeastern a lot of credit, because we've talked about it a bunch of times now. This is a team without a home. Home arena is gone. They're practicing at a different place. They're playing home games, quote unquote, in a different place for the second half of the season. But I guess maybe we shouldn't be surprised that team could go on can go on the road, play a true road game in the NCAA tournament and win. That's kind of what I took away from that, from the Northeastern side.
I thought too, there just must be some spectacular scouting, because their first 2 goals were carbon copies of each other, scoring the same way, same spot, kind of same everything on Hannah Clark, and she ended up getting pulled after the third goal. So there was only 1 goal scored on Layla Hemp. Yeah, I sure seemed. I mean, we talked about how poorly Minnesota came into the WCHA tournament. They are the team. I think there's a side plot here where, of all the stuff we talked about in the Olympics and how the Olympics of it all would affect things, we didn't foresee how hard it would be for teams to get chemistry back afterwards. That essentially, when that group left, the people that stayed formed their own sort of chemistry and core, and bringing those players back, they struggled again to get back to what they were before the players left. Just an interesting, not one of the things we talked about in all of the Olympics of it all. And Minnesota's the sort of had it the worst. I mean, several teams struggled with it, but Minnesota had it the worst in terms of trying to figure out who they were and how they were going to play in the couple of games since the players came back from Milan. And I think Northeastern came out and struck early, and Minnesota were on their heels, and that was kind of the end of it. And when they outshot Northeastern 35-10 in the second 2 periods. So major props to Lisa Janssen. But also I think they just were not necessarily on tilt until toward closer to the end, but it wasn't controlled. It wasn't the sort of style. You could tell they were playing from behind and gripping sticks too tight and just doing all the things that happen in that situation. But they just never quite found the smooth chemistry that they had early on. You weren't seeing sort of the circling of the zone with Abby and the quick passes and what, Annabelle Bellafinale getting to the net and all that sort of stuff just kind of went by the wayside. So, be an interesting thing to be paying attention to next time we're in an Olympic cycle, because it's just one of the things that I did not foresee giving a team as much trouble as they did to Minnesota.
Yeah, and the end of Minnesota's season with a 3-game series, losing the first game in the WCHA playoffs to St. Cloud State, having to come back and win games 2 and 3 to get to the final faceoff. Then kind of, we don't know what to make of that game, that performance against Ohio State in the final faceoff semifinals, and then losing in the first round of the NCAA tournament. It's important to bring up that Minnesota has some decisions to make here because Brad Frost is out of contract after this season, and there's you hear the whispers now and then, and it's just like, is where's this program going? And there's kind of a few layers of questions to answer there. There's, hey, where's the program going? Is it time for a change? Is it, yeah, and then who is it? And they all have to be wrapped up together. I don't know where that goes this summer. I think they need an answer sooner rather than later, but I do not know where that's leaning.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of our mentions were pretty full of fans that were ready for that change to happen in various levels of decorum and thought process on that. I don't know. I think one of the things, anytime you talk about a change, like from simple, like why did so and so get named to this roster on up, is you have to be willing to discuss who's the successor, or who do you kick out, who comes in. And we had this conversation a couple times with various people in press boxes, and it's an interesting place right now in women's hockey coaching, in that, like, I think there's a little bit of a gap still to some of the younger players, to that of like Brianna Decker, like newer generation that came out. And so, like, yeah, who is the coach? Who do you see? And I think, for Minnesota, I think it's probably going to need to be a Gopher, particularly after Frosty, if this is the change they're going to make. And so I think it's not as simple as whether or not you don't renew his contract or don't give him a new contract. I think it's who takes over that position. But yeah, I can see, I mean, the fans are restless. It's been 10 years since they won a title. They haven't been a serious national championship contender in any of that time. I mean, they've made some Frozen Fours, right? But I wouldn't say that they're not the top team, top 1-2 teams in the country. So I imagine that there are some people that are going to be pushing for that. But I do think the conversation first and foremost has to be like, who is there a better option out there?
Okay, let's move on to our final regional in Columbus, Ohio, where Yale got to the regional final by beating Minnesota Duluth 1-0, and they I guess sort of predictable exit for Duluth, in that their last 4 years exiting the tournament have all been by shutout. Yale was the one to get it done this time, but then Ohio State took care of those Bulldogs from Yale 6-1 on Saturday to advance to its 6th straight Frozen Four. Jocelyn Amos, 2 goals, 2 assists. Sloan Matthews, 2 goals and an assist. Haley McLeod, 22 saves. It's kind of like I said with Wisconsin. These are the names you're thinking of when you're in a big game for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think kind of the opposite of what we were saying in some of the other games. I actually think that game was closer than the final score indicated. I thought Yale played really well, and Samson Fry, who was a freshman goalie who took over the net in January, was given a really tough assignment. I think, Yale probably learned some tough lessons about being tough in front of the goal and being able to clear out some second chance opportunities. And that's something that they'll be working on. But it was a 1-1 game at the end of the first. And it was not sort of the sniping, like Ohio State, pretty, what we can see from them. Like they were some dirty, gritty goals, which is they can also do. I just mostly am saying, like, I think Yale made them work for it. And what am I trying to say? Like it was a narrow thing there that, like, I think Yale could have made a few adjustments and made that a closer game. But yeah, those were, you're going to expect those players to do well. I think Jocelyn Amos was probably the player that best, maybe second best, her and Lacey Eden together, like handled their teams while their Olympians were gone, really took advantage of the opportunity and did something, to make sure that their clubs were still where they needed to be after that month gone. But yeah, I was impressed with Yale, even though the final score doesn't show it. And obviously that's exactly what we expect Ohio State to do. They're going to use their size. And I think they were carving out space in front of the net. And that's how those second chance goals come. But also Jordan Baxter's wraparound. That one was spectacular. So, yeah, I think exactly what we expected there. And just, yeah, Minnesota Duluth going back for a second. Not only that, but they had a 6-1 win over the new Ha winner, which was Sacred Heart a year or two ago. But if you take that out, they have scored 3 goals in 6 NCAA appearances, and that's not good. That one's from Matt Willens. Yeah, it was bad, and I don't have any answers. Clearly they don't either, but there's a lot, I think, of questions and work to be done for Minnesota Duluth, because I just don't think you can go into an NCAA game and lose 1-0 or look at those numbers over the last couple of appearances and be happy and think that is, sustainable. So yeah, kind of frustrating for them for sure.
Yes, indeed. Okay, that's our look back at last week's regionals. We return, we will take a look at the Frozen Four coming up this week in State College, Pennsylvania. Stay with us on the podcast. We're back with the podcast, Todd and Nicole, talking the Frozen Four. Now we're into Friday's semifinals in State College, Pennsylvania. Agula Ice Arena will host for the second time. And the first game on Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, is Ohio State against Northeastern. That'll be followed by Wisconsin against Penn State around 7:30 Eastern. Buckeyes and the Huskies have some history against each other in the Frozen Four. Ohio State won 3-0 in the 2023 semifinals in Duluth. We weren't sure what to expect from Northeastern at the start of the season. They had a bobble last year, a season that was not up to their standards. But we have seen throughout the season where they've just built and had a comfortable lead in Hockey East and finished that off. And now they've gotten their way to their third Frozen Four, first since that 2023 appearance in Duluth. We knew Ohio State was going to be, we're pretty sure they were going to be here again, given the motivation that they took from last season. And so from that perspective, when you're looking back 6 months ago, I don't know if we would have, going to something you said earlier, we would call this as a semifinal game in a Frozen Four.
No, absolutely not. We'll fully admit we were wrong about Northeastern, right? And I think good on them for sort of just building throughout the season and really just proving that was a blip as opposed to, sort of the new state of things. I think too, their freshmen have just really, I mean, they've been good from the beginning, that they've really blossomed, and they're underclassmen overall. And I just think they've, sort of step by step built to where they are right now. And, we spent a lot of the season talking about teams that didn't sort of recover from losses or bounce back. And I feel like Northeastern is the team that did do that. Most of their losses were non-conference, and so that helped them in that step. But also, just I think they learned from their mistakes and just kind of continued to keep growing. And I think, Lisa Janssen is just an absolute. I feel like I don't want to say beast, but just a beast in that. I mean, she just is, she gives them so much confidence. She's, 6 feet, she's a big goalie, but I just think it makes such a difference and allows, particularly when your team is younger and they're learning and growing, it gives them the confidence to go out and maybe try more things and be, have more confidence on offense. And so I think that for them, this is really about building throughout the season. Coaches talk about peaking at the right time. And that's not to say that they haven't been good to this. I just think they really built week by week to get to this point and be prepared and to win a game against, Minnesota and be in this position. So I think the best thing that could have happened for them, sort of, if you're looking at just this matchup, knowing that they got to go and beat Minnesota last week, is the best possible prep they could have had to be here, to beat a WCHA team, to beat a team that, plays somewhat similarly, has, sort of the star power. And I think it's still going to be a tough hill for them to climb. It will be interesting to see how they handle, the speed and the just the pressure. Ohio State puts so much pressure on teams, and we watched them do it to Wisconsin, who knew it was coming, and it still foiled them. So I think it's really hard, like we were saying, it's really hard to practice for that. I don't know if they, if you're able to go and have your men's team come play against them, or somebody, an older squad that can come and put that speed on them. But I think, your regular everyday practices can't really prepare you for that. And it's less about skill and more about being able to make the right decisions or good decisions or even decent decisions without thinking about it, without having time to do that, to just get the puck and move the puck and not get sped up and overwhelmed because someone's going to be in your face. So I think that's the deciding factor for them.
I agree with all that. I do hold on, like reserve the fact that Lisa Janssen could be a difference maker, right? And it will take a really massive effort there, but she's done it. And so that's something I think can be Northeastern's X factor. How they can win that game is by playing strong defense and looking for a couple of chances and being able to bury them when you get them. So I do feel like, Ohio State has the experience. They've been in this, this game 6 years in a row now. So everyone on that team just about is knowing what this is about. It's going to be newer for a lot of Northeastern's players. And we've seen that in the past take a toll on some teams, especially early when they're trying to get their feet settled against an experienced team. But yeah, there's just that kind of like, I feel like a goalie can go out and win this tournament.
Yeah, I also think there's something to the fact that like Ohio State has been looking to avenge their national championship from the very second it ended. There is a lot more pressure on them in this game, and Northeastern has nothing to lose. Maybe they were the only ones that expected them to be here, 5 months ago, and so just being able to go in and not have that pressure and not worry about it, and sort of just go full guns blazing, not having to, not worrying so much about it. And I think, like you said with Lisa, I think they need to not let Ohio State score early. And I think they need to find that way to balance the offense with the defense. They absolutely have to put a focus on defense, but they cannot absolutely give up all of their offense in doing so. I think too about what Cass Turner said after the Wisconsin Quinnipiac game, which is that she had studied sort of the ways that Wisconsin had been scored on. And so they had a very clear plan on how to get past that pressure. They weren't able to execute it, but I feel like that's the similar thing that Northeastern's going to be doing is what were the plays? What were the ways that people have pushed back on this and broken it down, and finding ways to not just understand that, but being able to execute it is what's going to be the difference for them. But yeah, I actually think the ability to play with no pressure and just they've got nothing to lose. And Ohio State in their own heads have a lot to prove here. And I think those are the X factor things that can really make a difference.
The second game, Wisconsin, Penn State. This is let's see. My mind went back to the start of the 2022-23 season, which is a real long time ago and not so long ago in many different ways. It's right when Tessa Janicki's career started at Penn State. So we talked before. That's kind of the start of this arc, right? And maybe it'd been building a little bit, but that's when it took off. She scored 2 goals in her first collegiate game against Wisconsin at Pagula in a 4-1 win that really opened a lot of eyes that season. Wisconsin came back the second day and beat Penn State 9-1, kind of restoring what everyone thought was going to be in what ended up being really a topsy-turvy season for Wisconsin that ended up with surprising national championship in 2023. I don't know that series means a whole lot of anything almost 4 years later, but it came to mind that there's some familiarity with some of these players with each other, which and obviously there's more familiarity with a lot of the players that were on the Olympic team together with each other, or even in that kind of national team scenario setting. Other than that, this is a Wisconsin team that has been to 17 Frozen Fours, now leads the nation in that, and this is a Penn State team that is in its first. And I don't know how much to make of that. What do you think?
Well, I would go back. I would say one of the things of that 23 season series is that Penn State knows Wisconsin's people. That's the team that won a national championship that year, and Penn State hit them right from the first jump. And I think the seniors on this team are able to stand up there and say, like, they aren't an unbeatable giant. They aren't big and scary. They are a team we can beat. And I think that belief has to be like the foundation. You can't go in, scared. And so I think that just so silly how you can believe you could beat a team, but it makes a difference when you actually beat them. The mentality of that little flip. Yeah, the not having been there before, there's the like twofold, the comfort of being at home, but like I wonder if they get to be in their locker room.
I believe so. That's usually the way.
That they do.
I believe that's been the way it's been in the past. Like Minnesota got to use theirs last year because Ohio State was on the Ritter or on the Mariucci side and had to come out.
Right. Yeah. So, it's just, they're playing at home, but it's not at all like regularly playing at home. And there's different distractions and different timing and all of the things that change the sort of the pattern of the day that I think could really make a difference. So that's where Wisconsin, having been there before, and all these players, familiarity changes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much to make of that. I think there might be a bonus to not going in naively blind to all of it and being able to take it all in and not feeling any of that. I think, again, the pressure's on Wisconsin. Like, the expectation was for them to return to the title game. Everyone's been talking about Ohio State, Wisconsin. The players been talking about how badly they want a back-to-back that they didn't get, the last time they had won and came back the next year. So we could talk ourselves in circles on this. I think Penn State is also going to need some really good goaltending. I think they haven't played a team that plays this specific way that is anywhere near as deep as Wisconsin is. Mark Johnson was talking about running his full bench in the first 5 minutes of the quarterfinal game, which I'm not sure any other team was doing. We were watching Quinnipiac not put their fourth line out even at the end of that game. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things that Penn State has to prepare for, but I don't think that means they're unprepared for it or that they can't handle it. I just think it's all about how they adapt to what they're going to face here.
There are a lot of things that I can kind of imagine happening in that game. It kind of depends on who starts fast. Penn State gets a jump and gets a goal in the first couple minutes. No telling what's going to happen after that. If Wisconsin does the same, I feel like that plays into the kind of game that they want. They want to be able to control the puck, control the scoreboard, and basically put their best options out on the ice when they need them, and let them go and do what they have done now for 3-4 years for the team. So
yeah, that momentum sort of just rolling downhill. Like, once they've scored a goal, that absolutely changes things for them. Yeah. That's a good point. So, and Wisconsin has been known to not necessarily start fast. They can do it, but they have a tendency at times to be very flat, particularly in the first game of a weekend. I think also the sort of very obvious thing is face-offs, like how which team Wisconsin was very bad at them in the WCHA tournament, and that Mark Johnson has talked for 2 weeks now about his team chasing pucks and how he doesn't want them to be doing that. And so obviously I think that is a huge key for Penn State. Wisconsin wants to possess the puck. They want to be in control. They want to dictate things, and their entire sort of setup is based on that. And when they don't, it really changes their dynamic and really sort of throws them off kilter a little bit. So Wisconsin has to be winning faceoffs, period. But I think that's the way Penn State can really try and throw a wrench in things and keep Wisconsin from really. It's when Wisconsin settles in and they're holding the puck in the zone and still cycling out players and doing full sail line changes and things that you're just like, yeah, I don't know how any team faces this. And so I think they have to keep the Badgers from just getting settled and really feeling like they own the game, because that's really hard to break down.
Both of Friday's games on ESPN Plus, 4:00 Ohio State against Northeastern, that being 4 Eastern, 7:30 Eastern, Wisconsin against Penn State. Then the Sunday championship game, 4:00 Eastern on ESPNU, also streaming on ESPN Plus. Those semifinal winners. The Patty Kazmaier Award gets announced Saturday. So there is something kind of, if you're going, there's something to do between days, but that's a relatively short ceremony, half-hour ceremony that you have to be there at least a half hour ahead of time for. And I mean, it's still a cool event to be part of, but yeah, you've got a lot of Saturday to fill with if you're traveling to State College. But we'll get into that maybe a little later. When we come back, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to wrap things up, tease what we've got coming next week, and maybe even later on this week from the Frozen. So stay with us on the podcast. Welcome back to the PodKaz. We're looking ahead to the Frozen Four this week in State College, Pennsylvania. Both Nicole and I will be there. We'll hopefully have a little bit something from a podcast perspective for you over the weekend or later in the week. So keep your eyes on wherever you get your podcast feeds from, and we'll try to have something from State College for you. But we'll also, share with you here before we go a couple things that are kind of cool to do around State College. If you're going and you're looking to spend some time around the area, I kind of feel like you have to go to the Creamery at least once.
You do.
That ice cream is it's really good. Maybe not something you can do more than once because it's rich. And I have been there and I do recommend it, but you've also had some experiences there when you were there for the Frozen Four in 2022.
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the reasons I think the hotels are so like expensive is because there's usually like youth tournaments and stuff happening. So I would say just think about like timing and maybe get some information from people you see about when and where those, like I ended up waiting behind several teams of youth baseball players at the Creamery. So just a heads up on that. One thing we did 4 years ago. So I have a group of friends that just goes to every Frozen Four. If this is the first one they're not going to in several years. And we drove a van out there as 5 adults. My husband had a cast on his leg. My other friend had his hand in a cast. We were a motley crew in a minivan.
Wow.
But several people came and met us. And we went to 814 Cider Works. So I would highly recommend that. When we went, they had like outside fires and stuff. I can't find anything online about that, but we were able. They have food trucks. It's just a really pretty place. It says it's open every weekend. The cider was great, and it's just a nice place. It was nice to sort of tell people where we were, and people came and went. And so I highly recommend that. If you have not ever been to sort of the Pennsylvania area, there is a Primanti Brothers. That's a sort of local place, local legend, right? With the French fries on the sandwich. So there's that. There is a Nittany Lions statue. You probably want to go have your picture taken with that. I actually did it the last time because I have one from when I was like 4. And I didn't even think it was in the same location. So I took a new one and sent it to my mother. So she could have side by side. And then we said like maybe check the other sports schedules. I think somebody suggested lacrosse. I know softball's home. But yeah, it's I mean, there's like 8 local breweries and there's plenty of stuff to do downtown, but from a family wise, it's just a really pretty place. So, and it is supposed to be very nice by Saturday, like 60s. So hopefully you could just get outside and enjoy it. But that's why I would suggest the 814 Cidery. They have lots of stuff and games, and it was family friendly, and it was just a really pretty place to relax and unwind on Saturday night. So yeah, I think that's about it. Unfortunately we're really busy. We don't get to do a ton while we're there. But yeah, hopefully people find stuff, and if we hear more, we'll share it. But come to the PodKaz. It's it used to be a like paid ticketed brunch thing, and now it's open, and I think it's just a really cool experience. All the teams that will be there, the teams that are still competing, and obviously the players that are nominated, and you get a chance to see them up close and personal, and it's a really good experience. Usually there are signings surrounding that. I'd imagine there'll be some signings with some of the Olympians and things. So yeah, and if you see us, say hi. We have stickers. But yeah,
You're right. We do have stickers.
We're usually running around, so just stop and say hi, and if we're running off to something, we'll tell you where we can find you later. So neither of us is scary or intimidating. So we're very Midwestern. We're just usually distracted.
Right. That is more possible than being intimidating, distracted. Yes. Absolutely. So that's 12:30 Eastern on Saturday is the PodKaz Award. The doors open at noon. That is at the Hub Robeson Center on Penn State's campus. So or you can find out on that on PodKaz.com. That's KK Harvey from Wisconsin, Tessa Janicki from Penn State, and Abby Murphy from Minnesota. The three top vote getters. One of them will be taking home the award on Saturday. So yeah, lots of stuff that happened. I mean, we're focused on the hockey here because I mean that's why we're here. It does feel like this as an event. I do miss the years when there was a clinic or there was something. There was more happening that you could kind of point fans toward. And I wonder if we'll get that back. I wonder if that is just a function of there's a lot going on this week in State College. I think it's the Pennsylvania middle school basketball tournament is there the same weekend every year. And so that's the reason why all the hotels are
there was also
well advanced.
a youth baseball tournament. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a ton happening that isn't necessarily about Frozen Four. So yeah, I hope there's a little bit carved out.
Yeah, I would just say to people, like, think about that. Like, you're gonna go to restaurants and there's gonna be 7 teams so just things like that. You need to plan ahead for some stuff because there are large groups of children in most places weekend. Yeah, last year at Minnesota they had a bit more stuff. It wasn't necessarily all public, but there were some signings and clinics and things, and so maybe that's why people assumed there would be this year. And I guess I don't know that there aren't, but we haven't seen anything advertised.
I would say,
but yeah, I mean,
check the NCAA site on that for the Frozen Four because they will have. I think they've had a fan page in the past and things if you're going to check out. So.
The men have a full fan fest experience and there's a lot more going on and we can hope that we get to that point with the women. But the problem is that we continue to be at kind of remote locations. Next year we're in Duluth and the following year we are in Connecticut, but I don't remember what town. We're at Sacred Heart. So yeah, those will be better. But again, it's just different. I don't know how to. There aren't better words for it. I hope that things continue to change. Maybe when we are in sort of more populous areas, we'll start something ourselves. But yeah, I would say find your people. The best part about the Frozen Four is that everybody there loves women's hockey. I think, a friend of mine was at the Olympics and talked about walking around the concourse before the gold medal game. And she just took a moment to say, these are my people, and really sort of soak in that, these are a whole bunch of folks that went through, whether as fans or family or whatever, they've gone through the ups and downs of being involved in women's hockey and to see a full stadium full of rabid fans, it's pretty cool. And whatever the attendance is in State College this weekend, it's a bunch of people that love the game as much as you do, and want it to succeed. And so I think remembering that, and I think for me, I'm really trying hard to do that in amongst the stress of all the coverage, because it's a busy weekend for us, to just remember to enjoy it, because to some extent I start to dread this weekend just because it's a lot in a short period of time. And but it's a really special experience to be around that many people who love what you love and who want it to succeed as much as you do. And so I think that is my advice is find your people. Don't be afraid to talk to the person next to you, and then you'll have plans for Saturday night. You'll find your people and figure it out. So yeah, that's my advice, is just to remember to stop and take a moment to soak it all in, because we are so spread out, it's rare that we all get to be in one place. And so it's really a cool thing to stop and soak that in and think about when we didn't, when the PodKaz used to be exclusive and fans didn't get to go, and when, we just weren't getting fans at some of these games. And so people love women's hockey. The game's going to be on TV on Sunday. Let's make sure that if people at home are sad they're not there, and we show off the sport in the best possible way.
Absolutely. We will have one more episode next week. We're hoping that you'll send us some questions for our mailbag. You can find the email address at the bottom of our show notes. This is when we wrap up the season. Sometimes it's like we're in this tunnel vision of just having seen the Frozen Four, and so it's hard to think beyond that. So that's why I'm hoping people will give us some, even if it's not a question, it's can you give us some more on this or reflect on this from the totality of the season, and that'll help us kind of widen our vision a little bit as we get into next week and start to really kind of, unpack the season as a whole. So before we get there, though, we've got 3 more games to go, and we hope you enjoy them. We know we will, being on site. If you're there, would love to see you. Like Nicole said, if you're not, hope you enjoy them on TV or streaming. And we will see you here again next week for the season finale of the podcast. I can't believe it. It's already over or almost
so
to the
fast.
finish line. It has, and it's been really fun. And but we've got 1 week to go, so let's make the most of it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm Todd. That's Nicole. Thanks for watching the podcast.